I just barely got to have dinner with Scott and his. Got to know them just a little bit. A little of Scott's background is he co-founded Icon Health and Fitness with Gary Stevenson in 1977, and it's now the largest manufacturer and marketer of fitness equipment in the world. And he's a local boy. He graduated from Logan High School and Utah State University with a bachelor's in business marketing and a minor in Chinese. And he can't get away from Utah State. Now he's still on the Board of Trustees. He's been married for 31 years to Michelle. They have 5 children, 3 daughter-in-laws and 3 granddaughters. And just over dinner, as we were getting to know each other a little bit better, Michelle shared a story with me that might be a little embarrassing. But when Scott was in college, he went to pick up Michelle on a date, and he was wearing a product that they were testing for Icon, and it was an athletic shoe that had springs on the bottom. So he picked her up on this date and bounced his way all the way down to the football stadium to take Michelle to an Aggie football game. So that's a little bit of the personality behind the man that we're about to listen to. So
that was a real test. And I wasn't testing the shoes.
So, Scott Watterson.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. It's great to be here. Go Aggies. We are true blue Aggies. Just have my wife stand up just for a minute. Let's give her a big round of applause. Now, all you single men, please stand up. This is my daughter, Alicia. Say, I'm going to pay for that tonight, I'm certain, but we're glad to be with you. What was wrong with last night? Oh. So we have 3 graduates from Utah State. We have 1 graduate from that other school down south, and then I have 1 son that's he's still in high school. So usually we'll only let the BYU graduate maybe come to dinner once a month, and he has limited access to the kitchen. After last night, though, he has his way with us, if you will. And so I just hope that Utah State basketball, once they get their starters back and everything next year, will do the same thing Utah State football did. If you remember a couple years ago, some of you were here, we got really close to winning a lot of games, but we missed by just a little. And then last year, we figured it out. So we are true blue Aggies, and I am really happy to be with you. And I want to thank the business school and Mike Glauser for this opportunity to be with you. And I hope it's worthwhile to you today. What I'd like to do is first get started. It's called a little sizzle reel. It'll kind of show you a little bit of some of the things Icon is doing right now. It will focus on just 2 areas. One is iFit, and that's an interactive technology that lets you compete live, lets you be personal trained live, or lets you map your course anywhere in the world and run it. I ran around the Vatican City today based on what's happening over there. I thought I'd kind of see, what the terrain and stuff is like. It really was a good run. I ran on that this morning on iFit. So you'll see a little bit about iFit. And then you'll see something that's called Ultra Shoes, and that's a new outdoor running shoe that we just recently launched. And I brought that up for a couple reasons. Unfortunately, part of the story has to do with BYU again, and that's okay. But the better part of the story has to do with 3 young entrepreneurs that had a great idea, had a great product, and no home for it. And so I got involved with them here just 2 years ago, and they've gone from 0 sales to the 9th largest specialty shoe retail shoe in the United States. Not as big as Nike. Nike, of course, is in broad distribution, but in all the specialty running shoes, they've gone from 0 to number 9, and I think by the time this video ends, they might be up to number 7. They're really on a very fast trajectory, and they are young, aggressive, and they found a home with us, and all I know how to do is just keep on feeding them because they're on their way. So I thought you might want to see a little bit about that, and then after that, we'll go through a fast history, maybe have some a little dialogue about some things that may or may not be important. From my perspective, at least, I think they are. And then we'll have some Q&A, and that should be the best part of the evening. So if you'll just show that sizzle reel right now, I'll get a chance to sit down. Thank you.
No, I know that I'm not all that you got. I guess that I just thought maybe we could find new ways to fall apart. But our friends are back, so let's raise a toast. 'Cause I found someone to carry me home.
Coming home tonight. Just coming home tonight.
The moon is on my side. I have no reason to run. So will someone come and carry me home tonight? The angels never
Okay. Now, in just a second, keep the lights down. I told them to pause 10 seconds in between this one and the Ultra Shoe Company. There you go.
Reasons to follow in others' footsteps? 0. Things weighing on your mind when running? 0. Reasons to buy an Ultra shoe? 0. Drop. 0 drop places your heel and forefoot the same distance from the ground for natural posture, more power, and better running technique. Stress caused from squeezed toes? 0. Ultra's foot-shaped toe box lets your toes relax, creating a natural platform for more stability, maximum comfort, and improved performance. Connection lost between foot and ground? 0. Ultra gives you a responsive ride, plus full A-bound cushioning underfoot. Number of other companies that combine 0 drop, foot shape, and full cushioning in a single shoe? 0. Introducing Ultra. Visit ultrazerodrop.com now for free shipping. Wear them for 30 days. If you don't run better, send them back. 0 questions asked. Ultra. 0 drop, 0 limits.
So that's a little company that started 2 years ago and are on a very fast growth trajectory. And part of the thing that's fun for me at the age that I'm at now is I get to see young people that have a good idea and have some type of an influence on them in a positive way. And so that I just share with you so you can look at that. So our first board meetings, and that's loosely translated, our first board meetings and our first meetings and strategizing our whole business were here in this school, here in this building and in the library. I am very grateful for Terry Williams, who was one of my professors, and for Mike Parent, who I don't know if he's still teaching or he just recently retired as well Is he still teaching, or?
He just retired last year.
Just retired, okay. Terry Williams taught me a lot about the 4 Ps of marketing. I'm not sure if it was 4 or 6 at the time, but, pricing, product placement, and promotion, something to that effect. And Mike Parent was an economics teacher, and he taught us about supply and demand, and really taught me about price elasticity. And I was also taught then by Paul Randall and Pete Ellis. Pete Ellis, one of my favorite teachers. He used to always, when he'd teach, he'd be doing this the whole time. And we could tell when he really wanted us to learn something because he'd really get swinging. And so that was a good clue for what we should study for our test. But there are 3 of us that were first friends, and then we were students together, and then we became business partners. Gary Stevenson is my lifelong business partner, and he was with me from the beginning, and he's now the presiding bishop for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My other business partner, he left the company a little bit early, and sometimes he gets overlooked, but not in my eyes, and nor should he ever be, and that's Brad Sorensen, who was a very integral partner in the business as well, and a local boy here. And the 3 of us took classes together, and when we were seniors, we were in a strategy class, I think by Pete Ellis, and it was really cool. I don't know if they still do it or not, but they had us take an industry and analyze it and see what we needed to do to change it. Well, this probably shouldn't leave this room, but I'll be okay. Bishop Stevenson will be okay. But we were given the assignment of doing an analysis and a review on the wine industry. And that's fine, but we weren't very experienced in that. And so we studied it, and the problem was their sales were slumping, and they particularly slumped in the summertime, and all the beers and all the other beverages that were cooled would grow in the summer times, and wine sales would decelerate. And so we came up with a great idea. Now, this was 30 years ago, and so when I tell you what we came up with, you're going to go, duh. But at the time, they hadn't done it, the industry. We came up with what was called wine coolers. And some of you that know more about that than I do probably understand how valuable that has been. But it wasn't because they learned it from us. At least we don't know if one of our professors took it to that industry. But we certainly didn't. And but the good thing is that in that environment, if you will, we had a consulting team of teachers that had a great influence on what we did every day as we put together this little startup business. And so eternally grateful for that experience. And don't minimize the value of what you're learning now, because it will influence you throughout your life. So in a very short version, I'll just do some Cliff Note versions. And it won't make a lot of sense maybe the first time around, but then we'll come back around and see if it can make sense. But this is how the company went. Instead of doing summer sales, which some of you do now, we did a summer startup business. And we started up the business. In that business, we first sold brass candlesticks, brass candelabras. Many of you have seen the movie Les Miserables and the 2 brass candlesticks that were I think they were gold, I don't know, but ours were brass. And we sold those to a local retailer, ZCMI. And that's how we started. We had one thing to offer. A fellow student from Utah State was from Taiwan. I happened to know the language. That helped a lot. And so we became friends. And he was associated with a company in Taiwan that made these candlesticks. And so when we went into ZCMI, we had a price that was significantly better than what they had. And so because of price, we were able to first sell candlesticks to ZCMI. And that's how we started. After that, we got into marble tile, and then marble fireplaces. Interestingly, from fireplaces, and that we were the very first company to ever take a marble hearth And they don't make them that way anymore, but at the time it was really popular. And we would cut that out of marble, sand it, polish it, and make it about 2 inches thick, and put it in front of a fireplace. And there was a customer down in Bountiful that a great man and a mentor, literally, that said, you ought to try this. Nobody's doing it. So we did. Again, out of Taiwan is where we got that product produced, and that's how we started. When we started that business, one of us would be the businessman and sell it, and then when it was time to deliver it, the other one would put on his overalls, and it would take turns depending on who sold what, who the delivery boy was. We wanted them to think that we were a pretty big company, even though we were all of 2 men strong at the time. But that's how we started, and that got us into wood-burning stoves. Fireplaces, wood-burning stoves, fireplace inserts, that makes some sense, I think. And it was a great, great need for the customers for self-reliance at the time. Now, how do we get from there to fitness? Well, it went like this. As long as there was snow on the ground, the wood-burning stove business was hot, literally and figuratively. We sold a lot of wood-burning stoves. But when the snow would melt, that season would go, and all these dealers that would set up, they had nothing to sell because people weren't interested in buying stoves in the summertime. Lo and behold, a company gave us an opportunity to sell a great big outdoor trampoline, 14 feet. They were in Tallahassee, Florida. Now, there's 2 principles to learn in what I'm going to tell you next. They signed a contract with us that we would be the exclusive distributor through all of the United States if we sold 500 of these. Well, we decided to go set them up at wood-burning stove dealers and consign them, give them to them, because not a one of them would ever pay cash for it. But we knew something. We knew that they sold big-ticket items, and we knew they were hungry to sell something counter-seasonal to the business they had. And lo and behold, within 3 weeks, we had sold over 500. Now, here's the other part of that story. So we go back to get our next order, and the company says, just kidding. We can't give you exclusive. You're selling them too fast. And we want to do it ourselves. Bad idea to 2 entrepreneurial students from Utah State. We didn't like that at all. And so we went about making our own big trampoline. And through that, we were able to then sell, and we became the largest manufacturers of big trampolines in the world because they didn't honor their commitment. So lesson learned there, okay? The other thing, though, is that big trampoline that was a counter-seasonal business then got us into the little trampolines. And those little trampolines then launched us into this fitness industry. So you're kind of like trying to plant your seed, and it's got to take root somewhere. And as you start a business, you got to realize it's the tap root, the one that finds the water, isn't always the very first one. You send out a lot of different feelers, and not all of them find water. But the big tap root, when it hooks into water, baby, things start to happen, and it makes a big difference. And that's what we found with the fitness, with the little mini trampoline. It was exciting. We got from mini trampolines to exercise bikes. We were the first company to put a digital electronics on an exercise bike. That was a big deal back then, and that was exciting. Then we did rowing machines, and then it got us into treadmills and eventually into a full line of exercise equipment. And along the way, we recognized innovation is critical to consumer products, and it makes all the difference in the world that you come up with something different. We have some 300 patents in our company's portfolio right now, and some of those were started in those early days. And one of our more famous patents that you may recognize, you hardly can buy a treadmill today that doesn't space save. And so, you can fold it up, if you will, and vacuum under it for the home. Well, that was brought to you by my good wife, Michelle. I brought home our first big treadmill put it in the house, and she says, I don't want this in our house. It's too big. And so through that customer feedback, we figured out that if we space saved it, we folded it, and we put a really nice back on it, that would pass her test. And so she was the inventor of one of our more popular. We've received, tens of millions of dollars from licensing that patent to other treadmill manufacturers. So that then becomes the trunk, if you will, of that tree we're now growing, is you become a full line assortment of exercise equipment. After that, then you find your distribution is limited. And so then we get into branching out. Tree analogy may not work, but try to stay with me. We did a taproot, we got a trunk, now we're going to go with branches, okay? And branching out is a critical step in a business because you can't be dependent on one channel of distribution because that channel will eventually die or change. Some of our best customers are no longer with us today. Montgomery Ward's, Best Buy, I shouldn't say their name yet. Montgomery Ward's and, goodness sakes, Caldors, and the list is long of people who are no longer with us. And we realized at that stage in our development that we needed to have multiple channels of distribution. We accomplished that by having multiple brands. And that then became the launch of our multiple brands. So our brands are Nordic Track, Proform, Health Rider. We have Free Motion. We have licensed Tour de France. We've licensed Reebok, and we've licensed Gold's Gym on an exclusive perpetual license. And those are the reason we've done that, and we have these different brands is so we can sell different price points into different channels, and they can have a differentiation so that they don't compete head on with, say, maybe a deep discounter like Walmart. So our company now sells into multiple channels. So Walmart, to Sears, to Sports Authority, to Dick's Sporting Goods. And eventually in the last half a dozen years or so, we've now gone on a direct selling strategy where we're through the internet, we're now delivering product to the consumer at home. Because what's happened, the consumers voted to buy things online. So about $200-300 million of our total business now is done online. And that's a very great business. Again, primarily developed by some young, out of Utah State graduates that helped us get into that business. And so now we sell direct online, and that's been a growing business. We also recognize that the United States, that as great as it is, there is the rest of the world. And so then we went multinational. We're in about 64% of the world right now, in about 125 countries. Good lessons learned through that. Good lessons learned through that. Sometimes you need to invest, and sometimes it takes longer than you expected. That's where persistence comes in. This year, for example, our international business will become one of our more profitable units as a company. And for 8 years running, they were, what's the right terminology? They were not profitable. Some people might say other things about them, but my board particularly. But now my board thinks I'm pretty smart. But at the time, there was questions. So you have to be patient, if you will, with some of the strategies that you go about doing. Of recent, we've then recognized now we're in multi-channels with multiple brands in multi-countries. We've now recognized that there's a better business model yet, and that's in the service business. So to the extent, and iFit is an example of that. So to the extent, let's see, we have a personal trainer here. Stand up. Anybody wants to get personal trained, tell them your name.
Anthony Forrest.
How much do you charge? No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, Anthony's a 6-year student up here at Utah State, and he's a certified personal trainer. So let's recognize him. Thank you. I just met him tonight at dinner, and he looks the part. I mean, he looks the part. But what's exploding right now in the fitness world is personal training services and online training services, the ability to, if you will, coach and influence somebody through the internet in the comfort of their home on a one-on-one basis, where otherwise it would be unapproachable in terms of pricing to actually get his service one-on-one. But through the internet, then he can train 50, 60 people at the same time and personalize it. And so iFit then gets us into the service dimension. And service, it gets us out of the hard goods, if you will. It's the soft goods side of fitness. And so that's what we've started to do, along with selling service contracts, where we'll maintain the product and we'll sell what's called an extended warranty. Both of those business units are highly profitable. And so that is the new thing that, if you will, we're working on. Now, so that's the quick history and then the ultra story. I thought that I would pay back Terrell Williams. He taught me the 4 P's of marketing. And I'm going to give you what I consider to be the 4 P's of entrepreneurship. And they are very simple. The first P is perspective. To be able to be, the first P is, my secretary just wrote this, and she wrote perspective. Perceptive. Let's scratch that out. Perceptive is step 1, okay? Be perceptive. You need to see what the customer needs. You need to see what the customer needs, but doesn't know he needs it. The ability to be perceptive, if you will, and to be able to perceive customer. From the time we started here at Utah State till this afternoon, happened to have Dick's Sporting Goods Senior Vice President in our office the day before I came up here. From the day we started till today, we will put the customer at every meeting we're at, front row and center. He is the key to any consumer products business being successful. And you need to know and perceive what he wants and what he needs. My wife had a need. She didn't want a big treadmill in her house. Okay, it didn't take Sherlock Holmes. Let's figure that out. Let's fold it up and let's address that need. That's an example. So be perceptive. The second P is to be persuasive. Inside of every one of us is a salesman, just waiting to get out. Really. If I've learned one thing in life, I've learned persuasion is an attribute. It's a first attribute that you need in entrepreneurialism. And that ability to convince somebody of what they need when either they don't know they need it or they're reluctant to change is an attribute that you should develop. Big example was the big trampolines. There wasn't a wood-burning stove dealer that thought they needed that big trampoline. By the end of that first summer, there wasn't one that didn't need it. That's the way they got through the summer. The Ultra shoes is another example. Those 3 students that came up to see me, they persuaded me that they had something. They persuaded a treadmill manufacturer that he could be in the outdoor fitness business and that there was relevance. And they were right. So the second step is to be persuasive. The third is to be persistent. I think persistence is critical. overcoming objections, overcoming development difficulties, failures. Those spring shoes were a classic failure. They were classic. And we are now 12,000, let's see, I wrote this down somewhere, 12,775 days into this entrepreneurial experience. 35 years we're into this experience now. And there's not a day that doesn't matter. There's not a day where a decision won't change the outcome. And many times, they aren't the right decision. The key is to get back up, take your licks, and do it again. And it's not, and you've heard some of these lines before, it's not how many times you fall, but it's how many times you get up. And in entrepreneurship, that persistence matters. So don't give up. Don't quit. Stick with it. But if you've made a mistake, be quick to change and do something new. Okay? Then the fourth step is productivity or to produce. Some of us like to say, show me the money. Where's the fruits of your labor? You need to measure your productivity. You need to recognize whether or not it's productive. The direct response business, selling direct through the internet to consumers, was measurable. It was a calculated question. What will happen to our bricks and mortar retailers as we launch off into competing with them to the customer? Are we going to lose here, or what are we going to get here? And we had to produce in order to counterbalance the risk that was being taken with those channels of distribution. As it turns out, the consumer influence in the internet was bigger than all of them. And so the likes of Amazon and Yahoo and all the other people that we now do business with busied the minds of the Walmarts and the Sears and the other retailers, and they had to then launch into that business as well. And we had the answer because we had brands that mattered, and we knew how to deliver direct to the consumer, and we had already been working on that direct model. And so it's been a profitable business for us. But you've got to measure your productivity, and you've got to be productive. So the 4 Ps, got to change that, perceptive, persuasive, persistent, and productive. Those are the 4 Ps that I think would help any entrepreneur if they totally understand and apply that in what their endeavors are. That helps you bring, if you will, clarity to whatever your purpose might be. And spend more time on purpose than on whether it's going to just make you $1. Make sure you have purpose. Make sure you get it. There's a reason. The whys of what you do are so much more important than the how-tos. It is so much more important that you know why. It's so much more important that you are perceptive enough to know what the consumer wants. So start with why, then get to what as fast as you can, and you'll figure out the how-tos. Okay? That's that. And how long have we been? Where are we at? Okay. So I got some entrepreneurial stories that you can decide which one you want to hear. One is called the worm salesman story. Another one is Nordic Track and bankruptcy. Another one is the KUSU family, a Chinese family, and fortune cookies. Okay, so you got fortune cookies, and we'll vote on this. And then we'll start asking questions. Okay, you got fortune cookies, you got the worm salesman, and you got Nordic Track out of bankruptcy. Okay, so just vote. You get one vote. That's all you get is one vote. And then I'll tell that story, okay? Okay, Mr. Ke and the fortune cookie. That's pretty good. Okay. I like that one. That's the shortest one to tell. Okay. The next one is Nordic Track out of bankruptcy. Yeah, that one's okay. That one might have edged out the Chinese cookie. And the worm salesman. Okay, so edited version, fortune cookie, real quick. First time one of our business partners from Taiwan came to Logan, Utah. We took him to Chinese to eat, and at the end they give out fortune cookies. By the way, in case you don't know, and I didn't, even though I spent time over there, fortune cookies are a U.S.-made product. Some entrepreneur in the United States invented fortune cookies. So anyway, passed out fortune cookies, and we were so proud to give this to our Chinese partner. He took it, and he said, "What are you supposed to do?" He said, "Eat it." And he just started chewing on the whole thing. And he pulled out the paper after he had digested half of it. So anyway, sometimes that's things that happen. The other thing is the bankruptcy story. So we were a supplier to Nordic Track. They originally had the cross-country skier. They diversified. They had a bunch of retail stores, and they wanted to sell treadmills, and they came to us, and we became the OEM supplier of them. Over time, their store strategy didn't complement them. They were first a direct TV infomercial business, and they were making big dollars. As they tried to go conventional bricks and mortar, they failed. They went into bankruptcy. Unbelievable brand. They spent close to if I get this right, I hope I don't misstate it. I think they spent close to $2 billion in marketing the brand Nordic Track. Okay? And some of your dads, still, that's all they want is their Nordic Track. But anyway, they were fantastic at that, and then they got into another business, and they didn't know how to do it, and they went down. So there was a bankruptcy. And we were a vendor. That they owed us some money. And so we wanted to get that brand. And so there's a bunch of rules, if you ever go to a bankruptcy court, that you have to comply by. And you have to put in your bid by a certain day, and it has to be so much or else you won't even be invited to the courthouse. We did that. We had and could afford one lawyer, part-time, on a limited budget. And we had to pre-approve any dollars that he spent, okay? But we had one. The good thing about that one is he was young and he was smart. Another company shows up at the bankruptcy hearing. I said earlier it was Cerebus, but it was really Blackstone. And they are a big venture capital company. Big. They make Mitt Romney's thing little. These guys were big. And they still are big. And they came in, and there were 10 lawyers, literally, that came into that courtroom, and then about another 10 businessmen. And they were there to buy Nordic Track. Oh, boy. Sometimes it's just good to be dumb. Not usually. The little attorney that I was talking about, he started going through papers, and he found out that they had not submitted their papers in time. Judge ordered, court ordered that you have to have your papers and your bid in by a certain day. They had submitted them 2 weeks late. We talked, and I says, go for it. Because if they would have bid, we were gone, okay? So he raises his hand. Judge, they didn't play by the rules. And you should have seen them. They started, what are you talking about? And then, it was patent play. It was like good theater. It was amazing. and I was right in the middle of it, and he says, "Can I show you?" And he took it up and he showed it to the judge, and then they all came up and they said, "It doesn't matter. It's in the best interest of the estate, and we have spent a lot of time and effort on it, and we made a mistake, but we know it's more important that you get a good bid than some silly little requirement." The judge looked over what this attorney had provided, showed the facts, and he took his little thing and he goes, bam. He says, "You're dismissed." And he sent all 10 of those lawyers out, and they were cussing and swearing and doing things that you wouldn't imagine them doing as they walked out of the courtroom. And then we were able to bid and get Nordic Track, which is now one of our most popular, strongest brands. And so that's good, to be persistent and to be on time. Okay. So teachers, if you ever want to use that to get your kids to class on time, try that one out. All right, so that's a couple of stories. Any questions? Let's have some questions and let's see if we can help.
I have a question for you, Scott.
Okay.
So when you and Bishop Stevenson, I don't remember the name of the other guy.
Brad Sorensen. Okay.
When you
Brad Gary Scott.
were starting up, basically, did the partnership just kind of fall together and it just kind of happened that you guys were three great guys and it made the business work? Or were you a little more deliberate in deciding like who you were going to work with, like what partnerships you would use?
Yeah, I made them, roll up their pants and look at their ankles, make sure they were, appropriate. No, we were very first friends. We were friends from grade school. And then we became students together. And then we chose to pursue an opportunity because we were in this building learning about business, and we thought, let's give it a try. Now, something about that. Support. Support is critical. That you have partners that support you. That is so critical. And that you have family that supports you. So when Icon got started, it was first named Westlow. The reason it was called Westlow is because we went to the attorney to incorporate, and he said we had to have a name for the company. We didn't know we had to have a name. We just figured we just needed to sign a piece of paper. No, you got to have a name. So the only thing we could think of is things that started with our initials. So that's how Westlow became, and we formed the company. Then, if you can imagine, back then there weren't cell phones, and we couldn't afford to have our own phone. So Westlow International used my home phone. And my mother, bless her soul, and I can't imagine that I'd even do this for you, sweetie. Okay. My mother would answer the phone after we put out our little business cards. Every time the phone would ring, in our house, in our home. Westlow International, Watterson House. Honestly, Westlow International, the Wattersons, that and $1,000 that my father and Gary's father gave him started the business. Don't minimize the influence of friends, family, and a support system in anything you do. If you run over that, if you run over them, if you don't recognize their value, I hate to say this, but you'll fail sooner or later. So, Alicia, if you start a business, we're going to give you a cell phone and you can take care of it and you can answer it anytime you want. But we're not going to say Watterson's and Alicia's clothing service or whatever. Okay? All right, next question.
What role has networking played into the success of your company?
Explain what you mean by networking.
Meaning connecting with other people and how have different connections that you've brought in or Stevenson, how they influenced the expansion of the business?
Critical. Of course, and it's a very good question. And I think the best way to look at it, well, I don't have it down here, but let's give it a shot. Be willing to associate and be with and hire, if you are in a position to hire, people that are better than you. Recognize your strengths. Recognize the areas that you do not have core competency in, and partner with them. Invite them to be part of your team. So, critical to Icon's success, Bishop Stevenson, Brad, to a small degree, and I to some degree, we get, in all candidness, we get too much credit. It's those partners in that early stages of business, the financial group, the man who came and brought the financing leverage to our business so we understand it, the one who brings the merchandising capability to our business so that we can multi-channel, multi-distribute, then the person who brought, if you will, the development, the design influence to the business. Those men have been critical to Icon's success, and that approach then has continued throughout the life of 35 years. I have at Icon tonight working men and women that are far better, far smarter, more capable in any respect than I ever hoped to be. And recognizing that is critical. Okay? Good question. Yes?
When you and I met a few years ago, I remember one of the things that stood out was that you were very conscious of creating a large capital structure that you had to feed. And you told me that you only built brick and mortar to produce about half of what you sold, and then you had co-producers because you wanted to be the low-cost provider in the industry.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you creatively produced more with less, kept your costs down?
Yeah, so at one time the fitness industry was all manufactured in the United States. All the product was produced in the United States. All our competition had factories. Opelika, Alabama was an area that DP, which is no longer in existence, was the biggest fitness company in the world. And so we started out by manufacturing domestically. It's expensive. Because of the language skills, we were able to go to Taiwan and create partnerships, network with them in that sense, of people that were able to manufacture some of our product there. One of the favorite stories is a man who's now 35 years, our partner, Johnny Lee. I met him, and the way we met him is we went over to Taiwan, and trading companies who spoke English would take me to this guy's factory, and 3 different trading companies took me to this same guy's factory, and each one of these 3 trading companies said, well, this is our factory. Well, you know, I'm not the brightest light, but I get it after 3 times. Here's the same man at the same factory, and it can't be all 3 of them. It can't be their factory. So after the 3rd time, just as I'm leaving, then I start to speak some Chinese, because I happen to have learned that for 2 years that I spent some time over in Taiwan. And I started to speak some Chinese, and you should have seen this man whose eyes just went boom, because he didn't speak any English. And he was the manufacturer, Johnny Lee. And 2 days later, I got a phone call in my hotel. He says, are you the guy who spoke Chinese in my factory? And I said, yes. And we started a partnership there. And so that was how that started. But now what's happened, and it's a real legitimate challenge right now because of what's going on in America. But it seems like what we try to do is do a make-buy on whether it's better to produce it domestically, locally, or whether to build it in China. And in different cases, depending on the size and cube of the packaging, it will influence the cost of the freight, which is influenced and offset by the labor. So we do a very sophisticated make-buy, and right now about 70% of our goods are sourced overseas, and we are now in home exercise equipment where you're the only domestic supplier left. And so I'd like there to be more domestically made, but you need to work on your government officials to help us. So that's the challenge. But you have to have a diversified manufacturing strategy, or else you're out of business. Okay, next question.
One more question.
Okay.
What's like social media? How do you manage the positive and negative that comes with it? So it's all out there.
I am so glad I'm an old man. The world that you're growing up in is so influenced by social media and by what's it called? When you give a recommendation on a product online. What is it? Review. Yeah. 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. It goes something like this. 5-star, you can't keep it in stock. 4-star, still pretty darn good sell. 3-star cuts it down about 40%. Below 3-star, you might as well start selling something else. That's the influence of social media today. We had a product on Amazon. For 3 weeks, we sold it like a rocket ship. The quality wasn't as good as it needed to be, and we ventured to guess some of our competitors put some negative reviews on. Of course, we can't validate that until I get that one attorney back. Then I'm going to go sick him on him. But anyway, and then the reviews went down, and our business just fell out of the sky on that product. And so what you have to do is you have to recognize that your business is being shouted from the rooftops, literally, and everybody knows it. And so you have to produce quality, and you have to produce value, and you have to use that social media in helping you influence. That is a stronger marketing driver right now than any print advertising or any even TV advertising. It is critical to a company's success. Good luck on it. Okay, so is that it? Thank you for being patient with us, and thanks for inviting me.